We now move into the last section of the income statement key measures that we're going to create. And this is going to be for our vertical analysis. So we're going to create, so now we're going to create some complex DAX, but I'll take you through it step by step, or you'll also have access to these formulas in your course summary notes. Okay, so the first one we're going to create under the IS analysis. Okay, the first one we call this the IS table data. So I'm just going to put that in. You can just follow along. So we're going to use your selected value, and we're now going to reference to the table, the menu we've just created, to the options, select the options. So what we're saying here is that if we select the actuals on the menu, it will show the actual values. Okay, so that's the first measure we've created. Now we move on. All this seems, but all this is probably overwhelming, but it will all start to make sense when we're putting the dashboards together. Okay, so now we're going to create a variance. So VIR DAX, we're going to give the variance a name of income, and this is the formula that we're going to write. So we're going to say calculate. So we say go and fetch us the income statement values. If the data category equals income. So that's our first variance. Now we're going to write another variance. We're going to call this variance expense. You can see the color is different, so that's actually the name of the variance. You'll see just now what it will make sense to you just now when we wrap up this formula. And this, if you recall, remember in the previous videos I mentioned that we're going to actually convert the expenses to a negative value, and this is where we do it. So we're saying in this instance is that where the values, where the IS data, the table with the column category is expenses, multiply that value by -1 to give us a negative. Okay, what we're writing here is like a nested if statement, like an Excel. So we're going to say now, so if our selected values so if our category is expense, in reference to, you'll see now the income. So here's the variance, this variance that we've just written here. Here's the variance. You'll see it's a different color, and it's shown by XY symbol. So we're saying use that variance. I move on to the next line to do the expenses. I encourage you to type this out. Don't just copy and paste from your notes. It's the best way to learn. I just want to make sure there's no errors in this function before I explain it. So let's just enter it. And okay, so that's working. So just to recap, so what we've done here is we've said if the income statement data table, the category, if it's equal to income. So if you recall in our data table, just go here. I just want to collapse all this. It's important I'll show you. So what we're saying, if this category here is income, then show the value of the expense. And if it's expense, show the value, but show it as a negative. That's basically what we've written here. So just to get back, so was it? So if it's income, shows the income variance. So this income variance is that. If it's expense, apply this calculation. So take that take the expense minus 1. Otherwise, it's income plus expense. Okay, so we click that. Okay, now the next one we're going to create. So this is the where it gets a bit more complicated. So you can just sit back and see how I do this, and then you can attempt it later on yourself. So we're going to create another variance. So now this variance is where we want to only show the current year's values when we build our dashboards. So we're going to call it current item equals calculated. Selected value. So now we're going to reference to the income statement template to the IS. So if you recall, in our income statement template over here, we've got a column that says IS items. It's without the indentation, where we've trimmed the text. So now we're going to say if any of, when we build our dashboard, if any of those line items gets detected, then we need to apply value to it. So that's what we're basically doing here. So return. So this is like a sum if true, like we do in Excel, but in DAX it's a switch true function. So now we're going to say current item. Okay, so you see current item again, that's the variance we've created, so XY. We can click on that. We're going to say if the line item on the income statement format equals total revenues, then show me the total revenues measure. So what that means, if I just go back to my, so this total revenues here. So think about this being the format of the income statement that we're going to build. So if the income statement shows a line item of total revenues, then show me the total revenues measure, the value for that measure. That's basically what we've done. Just simplify it. Okay, so now we're going to do it for each other one. So I'm just going to copy and paste the current item just to speed it up a bit. So we're going to do the same now for total cost of revenue. So all the key measures we're building in the income statement section, we're going to do the same for the balance sheet and cash flow. So it's a process of repetition when it comes to that. But I'm not just copying and pasting the DAX formulas, I'm actually typing them so you can get a feel of how to do this and to understand why we're doing it. Okay, so when we get to percentage, so these are numerical values. When we get to percentages, you need to show the format as a percentage. So the way to do that is type in format, DAX, format. Then we say we want to show the percentage in this format, 0. So we want to show it in 2 decimal places. You can make it 3 decimals, or you can make it 1, however, whatever your preference is. But I usually use 2 decimals. Okay, so moving on. Total OPEX. Okay, so that is total. Okay, operating income percentage. Again, because we're using percentage, we want to format it correctly. Okay, we want to do total. Sorry, this one. Total profit. The other thing to note is the description that you're giving here between the quote marks, you need to have it exactly the same format as per your you need to have it exactly the same format as you've got here. If, for example, if you've got total gross profit and you write total gross profits with an S, it won't pick it up. So you need to be, your description need to match this. It is case sensitive. Okay, profit before tax. I'll check now while there's an error. Oh yeah, we need to close brackets here. Okay, total, we got profit before tax. Okay, next one. And the way to find out if you build your income statement and you don't see any values next to these descriptions, these line items, then you know that your descriptions aren't matching. Something's wrong the way you've inputted the values or the text. So as you can see, we've started the course with very small formulas, but as we move on, the formulas are just getting bigger and bigger, and that's tax. It's quite a complicated language to get your head around, but like I've said many times, is you need to just practice to get a feel for it. Remember, once you've done this, you've done it. So it's the hard work's been put in. Okay, again, here we've got need to format this one. Okay, that should be it. So now we just wrap it up. I'm just going to finish this and just make sure there's no errors, and then I'll run through it. Okay, so I'm holding thumbs, enter. Let's just make sure there's no errors in this. Okay, there's no errors. That's great. All right, so what we're saying, like I said, is that we're going to look at the income statement column on the template, the IS items, and we're going to say if the line item shows total revenue, then show total revenue, and so on and so forth. Where there's percentages, we need to format it. So we show the measure, but we need to show it as decimals. And then what we're saying, any other items on the dashboard, use the IS actual measure that we've created previously. Otherwise, use the actual values measure for any other current items that's not listed here. Okay, so that's this formula. We're now going to do the same for the IS last year. So what I'm going to do is this one I'm going to copy and paste because it's very much similar. So new measure. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is change that to last year, and hopefully this will speed up things. So now all we need to do here is just change this measure to last year's measure. I think this one has got a different name, OPEX. Total OPEX, this is how it looks, total. operating expense. I think it's this one, yeah. Okay, data operating profit. Again, that's a different description. Operating profit last year. Operating. Okay. Let's look at taxation last year. I think it's this one. Interest last year. Net profit. That's probably going to be just net profit last year. I'm just referencing to the time comparison measures we've created. See, it goes a lot quicker. So either way, you can type this out, you can copy and paste, you can do as you like. I've just done this just to speed things up a bit. Okay, so at the bottom here, this is a bit different. Just going to delete this. Calculate. We're going to apply a filter here. Because we're looking at the prior year's figures, this part also changes. So okay, if you remember the date add, we need to look at the actuals for comparative. -1. Okay, so I will probably get errors in this one. Let's just hit enter and see what happens. Okay, so there's an error. I think this might be part of it. Okay, great. That works. Beautiful. Okay, so last year, so it's the same as the income statement current year measure in the previous example we've built. We've just applied last year measure, and we've just changed the end part of the switch function, where we say is look at the actuals, but for the last year, for the prior year. Okay, so I'm happy with that. That looks fine. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next one. Okay, so this one, I might also just copy and paste just to speed things up a bit. What we're going to do now is we can actually do the vertical analysis calculation. So I'm going to call this vertical vertical analysis. So vertical analysis for the current year. We leave that, that's fine. Okay, so now if you remember, we created revenue as a percentage of revenue, all the comparatives. So now here, all we do is we reference it to the revenue over revenue measure. So we're saying in the vertical analysis in our income statement report, take the current year's revenue and divide it by the total revenue to give us 100%. We're going to do the same with cost of sales. We're just going to replace this now with revenue over costs. Revenue to costs. There we go. Going to do the same with gross profit. So I'm just going to apply this for all these ones. So they all start with the word revenue. We don't need to do that. We can delete that line item because you don't do vertical analysis in the gross profit percentage. Okay, total expenses, so revenue over OPEX. Then we've got let's see, that's fine. Revenue over operating income, yes. Okay. Again, we don't need to see the percentages. When we look at the vertical, we might as well delete the net profit there as well. Okay, so we've kind of got up to OPEX. Now we're going to do vertical analysis. We're going to shift enter. So I'm going to say current item. Now we're going to look at our general expenses because we want to do individual vertical analysis on this line item. So there should be a revenue. There we go, over general OPEX. That's great. Now we're going to do the next one, which is selling. And again, you need to get this description as per your template, word for word. Otherwise, it won't work. And yeah, we've got sales and marketing. Another one was R&D. This one's called research and development. Okay. Next we need to do is we need to do total profit before tax. So you see, once you've got your measures in place, it goes pretty quick, but it does get a bit complicated. But like I said before, you just need to practice this. So we've got revenue over, so we want to do our tax. Then we've got our the revenue over interest. And our total net profit there. Sorry, it's revenue over. That looks good. Okay, so this should work. So there we go, it works. So what we've done is we just applied a vertical analysis. So any of these line items on our income statement it shows, we'll bring in these measures. Otherwise, we'll just show the actuals for the current year. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll move on to the same, but we're just going to do it for last year. So what I may do is I'm just going to copy this again. New measure. Copy paste. Change it to last year. Okay, and all I'm going to do here now is just reference it to the last year measure. So we're doing a vertical analysis on last year's comparatives. This should go pretty quick. It's just the coding at the end that will be different because we need to bring in the date add function. So this is definitely like learning a new language. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hit enter. And I'm going to go to this ISL. I'm just going to take this last bit here. And I'm going to copy and paste it in the L last year comparative. So I'm going to just overwrite this. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So if I press enter here, it should work. Okay, so let's just see where we are. I think it's this year. Okay, great, that works. Perfect. So some examples in the previous one we've just used last year. We've done a vertical analysis for the last year using last year measures. So I'm happy with that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, next set of measures. Now we're going to look at the year-on-year change. So I is year-on-year change. So this is the horizontal analysis. So again, I'm going to copy any one of these. I'm going to use the previous one we did. I'm just going to copy this. It's the same principle. We're just going to use different measures, reference it to different measures. So I've just copied and pasted it. So that's fine. Happy with the heading. It's the heading of the measure. It's just like that. Okay. So what we're going to do here now is we're just going to reference this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take total revenue less revenue from last year. There we go. Like that. So that just shows the difference year on year. We're going to do the same with cost of sales. Okay. Okay, now we need to do is this one here. We don't need to see, I'm going to leave this. We don't need to see these. I'm going to delete these items here. You can show it if you want, but I'm going to just leave them out. Do profit before tax. So far, I'm happy with the measures. If there are any errors, we'll pick them up as we start building our dashboards. Okay. Okay, and this is year-on-year change, so we want to make sure that this section here is right. Just checking it. It looks all right to me. Okay. There's no errors there. That's great. Okay, then we'll move on to the next section. I'm actually gonna, I may just copy and paste. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna actually just copy and paste this measure. Let's do that to speed it up. So we copy that. We create a new measure. We put it in there. And we call this year-on-year change percentage. So basically it's just year-on-year as a percentage. Okay, so the only difference here that we're going to do is we're going to say divide function we're going to say we're going to reference to the previous one we've just built, measure, year-on-year change over revenues last year. So that's what we're going to do. That should work. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to copy and paste this section over that. I do it like this, because this in theory should work. You can type it out if you want. Okay, and then I'm gonna copy this last section. Hope this works. So look. Okay, okay, then I want to bring in another formula here, which I'm just going to bring in here. Go. Okay, now let's see if this works. Sorry, right there. Okay, so it works. Okay, so this again, we're looking at the horizontal change of a percentage. So all we're doing now, we're saying divide. So the total revenue, look at the total revenue year-on-year change by looking at the measure. And then for revenue, and then divide that over as revenue as a comparative for last year. And we've just applied that throughout. I just want to make sure I've got all the right line items for us. Gross profit, OPEX. Okay, that looks fine. And then what we're saying is that any other current items not in this list, apply the same thing, take the actuals and divide them by last year's change, and also look back to the prior year by applying a date filter, because we're looking at the year-on-year change. Okay, so that's another hectic DAX measure that we've created. And I think we're going to now move just on to, I believe this is the last one. And the last one I'm actually going to copy and paste from my notes. And I'm just going to run through it because it is quite a long formula. And then we'll just run through the formula. So by now, you should have a good feel for variance, how to write variances with switch true. So let's maybe copy this one and just run through it. You can type it if you want. I had to learn this myself, learn how to develop this myself, but I'm happy if you just copy and paste, or you just need to see if there's any errors it's picked up. Okay. All right. So this one's the annual income statement totals. Okay. So this is. I just want to tidy this up a bit. Okay. So that's fine. Okay. Again, we're looking at the income statement template item IS items. Okay. All right. So let's just check how to calculate revenue. Wherever there's highlighted in grey means there's an error. So that all looks good. I think this should be cost of sales. Which is revenue. So anything in black means that there's an error. You just need to relink it up again to change this. Let's just change that to date. So this DAX formula here is just a replicate of all the other. It's the ones, all the ones that we've created before that we put into one. And why we're doing this one is because that's when we only want to show the annual totals, which we'll see later on. Okay, so we'll return. So what we've done is we've built an IS table previously, if you recall that. And we're saying, so on the menu, if we select actuals, we only want to see actuals. So actuals over here, that's our actual variance. So we only want to see the actuals. If we select versus last year, we'll want to see the versus last year variances. It should be, there's the last year, so it's all this coding at the bottom, and so on and so forth. So we got that and that and that. I just need to figure out why it's giving us an error here. Oh yeah, vertical analysis. We didn't do we didn't do this one, so we need to delete that. Okay, year on year. What's the name of the? Make sure we've got that variance in here. See. I'm just going to take this out. We don't need that now. Year on year change, that's the name I want. There we go. I just saw some errors here. So I'll explain this long, complicated tax measure when we build the income statement. It's a bit overwhelming. It's basically I've combined all the measures we've created into one here. So there's no point of me typing it all over again. So I'm not seeing any errors at this stage. So there's like I'll just make sure that the cost notes reflects the correct tax formula, this tax formula, because it is quite lengthy and complicated. So I just want to press enter and see if it's fine. Okay, so I'm picking up an error here, as you can see. So we just need to fix this. So somewhere here there's an error. There we go. After a while, you get pretty good at spotting where the issues are. See, now it's fixed. Okay, so let's make sure that's the last. Okay, so that was quite an intense session of creating the last part of creating DAX measures for the vertical analysis. We'll revisit this DAX measure at a later stage, so that you can see it in relation to actually building stuff. A lot of these measures will make sense once we start putting the income statement together. On its own, it looks very complicated, it looks overwhelming and very intimidating. But this is the level of DAX that's required to build dynamic reports. So that concludes the modeling we've done for the income statement. As far as I can see, we may revisit some of these measures at a later stage. But now we'll move on to the next lesson.